A few weeks ago, I went to a dinner, a normal dinner, right up until the people around the table started talking about how they actually work. And somewhere between the appetizers and the check, I realized that I was behind. And not a little behind, it felt like a lot behind. These people are running whole fleets of AI agents at once. People who'd stopped typing prompts one at a time in and started building real robust systems around their agents. Machines that do their work and in a couple cases run their entire business while they sleep. I went home that night and I can tell you, I did not sleep. And I've been trying to catch up ever since. So I did the only reasonable thing someone could do, and I invited them onto the show to explain themselves. Peter Bell is more or less running a company out of a stack of computers in his house, an army of agents handling his research, his writing, his outreach, with him mostly just pressing approve. He's also writing the O'Reilly book on how teams should adopt all this, which means he's thought about it harder than almost anyone. Taylor Dolezal runs the open source at Dosu, and he's the one who got me into this mess at the first place. He thinks about memory, how you get an agent, and a whole team of them to actually remember what they've learned instead of starting from zero every time. And Adam Anzuoni is from Cursor, which if you write code, you already know. He's watched the whole industry shift from agents that run on your laptop to agents that run in the cloud while you're out living your life. And he'll tell you what that actually changes. This is the first panel I've ever done. 3 people living a few months in the future, telling the rest of us what they can see from there. What they build, how they build it, and what they learned the hard way. Let's get into it. Welcome to Alexa's Input AI podcast, where today we have my first ever panel, and I'm very excited about it. We have Adam Anzuoni from Cursor, Taylor Dolezal from Dosu, and we have Peter Bell from Gather.dev. Peter, you're also head of a CTO organization, right?
Yeah, so Gather.dev is a community for senior engineering leaders trying to figure out agentic adoption. And then I'm also writing the O'Reilly book on scaling AI adoption in engineering and then spending way too much time building systems for fun.
So you know you've made it when you have an O'Reilly book.
My name is Taylor Dolezal. I'm head of open source at Dosu. So I get to talk with maintainers and agentic people working through their workflows. I focus on knowledge infrastructure. That's mostly what we're working on at Dosu. So everybody's working across agents and trying their best to remember things, but Dosu can help you out there with capturing not only what you're learning, but the rest of your team, writing documentation, and sourcing that knowledge and context for your agents. So very fun. In past lives, I've worked at Linux Foundation and HashiCorp, Disney Studios. I've got many fun stories and interesting things to talk about on that front. I will not make you exit through the gift shop because that's a prior role experience that I was trained on.
I love that. Adam?
Hi, my name is Adam Anzuoni. I'm a go-to-market systems architect at Cursor, and yeah, really excited to talk more about some of the things that we've been releasing lately. Some top of mind things that I get really excited about are the shift from local development to cloud development and kicking agents off asynchronously versus traditionally needing to be in front of your computer and typing to talk and interact with your agents. So super excited to be here.
Great. So I think this group of people is what I would consider definitely agent super users. And I would say I'm an engineer. I've been coding with AI. I've been using Claude Code, all that. But I have a bone to pick with 2 people here, Peter and Taylor. And Adam, I'll tell you why. Because Taylor invited me to a dinner and I started to listen to them talk about how they're using agents and all the things they were doing. And since then, I don't think I've slept a full 8 hours. It's hard. I've been trying to catch up, and I really dove in that weekend. I set up all my agents and I got everything running, and I've had a lot of trial and error. And so I can't wait to hear from you guys what you're doing and how you're approaching it in order for people to take away some systems in which to apply to their own builds. So maybe we can get started with that there. Briefly describe your current build, or I know you have multiple general setup or your most interesting build that you want to share. And then maybe one realization you've had while you've been developing them. So maybe Taylor, if you want to start.
Yeah. So first off, got to say my apologies. The curse of knowledge or agents, right? I think Peter and I have worked with Kelsey Hightower before for like executive summits and other things while at the CNCF and Linux Foundation. And one of the things that has stuck for me that Kelsey said was in this room, in the session that he was in, Kelsey asked, "Hey, has anyone worked less now that we have AI and agents?" No one raised their hand. So definitely seen that byproduct as part of this experience, because now it's so easy to go and get answers to these questions that you have, right? Or spin up an MVP for something you might use or throw away. And so that, at least I've got a good amount of ADHD that I try to work on at any point in time, but it feels like a superpower when it comes to working with these agents. And hey, can I measure this? Is there a method for that? Is there a formula for X, Y, Z? Or just going and gathering research on a whole bunch of things that I want to take back to my team, or just questions that I might have individually. So when it comes to my setup, I'll use, it's been an interesting week, right? Interesting month in terms of Claude releasing Fable 5, and then it's gone, and it's back again, and then your credit limit gets reset. And then same thing with OpenAI releasing Sol, Terra, Luna, GPT 5.6, and the differing levels of effort there that you can use for your stuff. So I'll bounce around and use certain things. Right now, I'll use Fable 5 for a lot of the creative type work, or make a plan for what I want to do. Then now I'll feed that plan to Sol Ultra, while I have credits available. And then that will carry through the work. And then lastly, I'll have Fable take a look and validate what that looks like. So things that I'll work on are like writing. I've got a fun app that we're working on at Dosu that takes a look at all of your coding sessions and agents, costs, context, planning, messages back to you. We're going to be releasing that here in a couple of weeks. Very fun tool to play around with. But again, it just started with am I getting my subscriptions worth of money? The answer is yes. And now I can actually see how and how long all these things are taking, or how much like wall clock time I've burned versus the actual agent run time. So a little bit of everything. Codex is cool. Conductor as a product is really cool. One of my colleagues made another project called Helmore, which will let you kick off things in work trees so that you can get little chunks and bite-sized tasks done. But I'll put a pin in it there. But yeah, so much to expand on that front. But that's a little bit like how my daily workflow looks like right now.
Yeah, I have noticed there's a shift from a certain type of prompt engineering to, I don't know what you want to call it, guideline engineering. That's really important. And I want to dig in to that as well, for sure. What's one thing you've realized from doing all this that has really helped you?
The thing that I've realized is it's okay to stop. I think to that point is it really does help trying to, before you even use AI to write a plan, have some, even if it's a very loose definition of where you want to go or what some of those outcomes might be, spend a little bit of time on that. It's okay to get away from the screen and the computer, write some things down and just kind of think about things and reflect a little bit, and then go and write your plan, make sure everything looks good. Try to be as involved as much as you can with the process in terms of what you want the outcomes to be. Then it makes your loops or goals or even these coding session runs a little bit better on yourself as you continue to work with AI. AI will just continue to expand. There's always one more thing it'll ask you or suggest to you to do. And, it's I struggle with that, is just how to stay on track, get done the thing that you were looking to do in the first place, or remember that, write it down somewhere. And then you can continue iterating, but tightly bound things is, I guess, what I'm trying to say. And then try to pick some goals and some things that you can measure, write tests, things like that has been really helpful for me.
Yeah, I resonate with that. A lot of tabs open and it can be a bit overwhelming, but also a superpower. So Peter, can you describe a build and something you've realized as well?
So I'm kind of building one core system to run my entire business. I just decomposed it into now have a central business system that will do all the GTM and the research and the content. And there's basically the system of record. I've got an orchestrator for managing the multi-step autonomous flows, which are kicked off either by cron jobs or by triggers. Like there's an inbound email, which means it needs to be deterministically classified. And then it needs maybe a haiku to have a little look at it. And then if it needs to go to a response, it goes through a multi-step play, depending upon whether it's replying to a partner or a participant or a presenter, let's say. Then I've got a task management system. I deliberately broke that out. So if I ever wanted to use Beads or Linear or Jira, or if I open source this and have other people who want to use other systems of task, I can do so. And then there's the model workers. So I have those running on 3 Mac minis right now because I'm running like 9 Anthropic plans, 2 OpenAI, and I just added a cursor to the mix so I could get Grok and the Gemini stuff a little more easily. And I mean, what I've really seen is the way I actually engage with this is I have a front door. Right now it's using Sonnet 4.6. I prefer that to 5. It's just a little more, it's a little quicker. Sonnet is really good at helping me to shape the prompt that I want to send to a smarter, more specialized model. So that's its responsibility. Once I've done so, it classifies what we've done. And then what I have is I've got a 10% of my fleet capacity is running evals against new model versions all of the time. We start with doing research. What are people saying? Oh, Grok 4.5 is good at this. Great. So that is a proposal. I can't afford to test every level of every model in every way. So great, this might be good at this thing. I then classify all of the steps in my pipeline because you've got what? Classifiers, generators, summarizers, reviewers, and tool use. And then within generators, you generate copy or you generate code. Code could be React or Rust. Copy could be a LinkedIn DM, or it could be an article or a chapter of a book. Each one of those then has evals based on production data with holdback data. And then I've got a model test bed that autonomously says, hey, there's a new version of a model. We've got some capacity. There was good buzz around it. We think it might be good in these 4 slots. We're going to test it against. And the goal is for any given step type, model step type, to have a primary, a secondary, a possible, or a set of possibles and a set of don't users. So we're not going to use Haiku as our primary architect, for example. And what's nice about that, it's now set up. Right now I have to press a button because I don't trust it. But theoretically, if Anthropic goes down tomorrow morning, I can press one button and I have, for everything that I use Anthropic for, I have a backup using OpenAI or Grok or Gemini. So deterministic pipelines, intermediate artifacts, quality gates, and then just a bunch of interactive stuff to build the new features.
Good data on the models, especially for a lot of type of things people are running. Do you publish that anywhere?
I haven't published. So the model test bench started about 8:30 this morning. It was running roughly by 9. I have some data now. Give me till Tuesday. I'll be frank, I think that the main thing I'm doing is showing what my data is. I'm not sure that it's wildly generalizable. It's not going to be as good as the real benchmarks and stuff, but yeah, I'll share it just as anecdotes, which people can then compare with 500 other similar people and decide what what they do or don't want to test themselves.
And then it becomes the data in their pipeline.
That's it, right? It's all about the evals, right? I was speaking to somebody like 2 years ago, and he's like, so look, if you've got a team of 10 people, make sure 6 of them are writing evals and 4 is doing everything else, because that's the stuff, that is the value that you're building.
Yeah, wow. Okay, great. So Adam, what is your current build and what's one realization you've had?
Yeah. So my workflows are really in 2 buckets. One is building new features within the internal systems here at Cursor, and another is supporting them. So for really both buckets, it starts in linear. And for support, that mostly starts in a Slack channel and a Cursor automation, reading that Slack channel, determining, is this a question, a bug, or something else? And if it's a question, it reads through my Notion pages, attempts to answer the question. If it needs my help, it will tag me. If it's a bug, it will look through my linear, has this already been tagged or created or not? And if it hasn't, it will create a new linear ticket. And then if it's something else, it will mostly tag me as well. But that immediate response is able to, as Cursor has in the last 6 months gone from 200 people to now almost 1,000, has really helped support the internal systems here at Cursor. And for builds, that normally starts in usually a Notion AI note where I'm either on a phone call or in a meeting with someone who's requesting a new feature or looking to solve a problem. And those notes get fed into my linear page and packaged up into the tickets. And then when I'm in my build phase, I'll take down the ticket, bring it into plan mode. Right now, my favorite model is Fable for creating a plan, depending on if it needs to be done. It depends on what type of ticket it is. If it's something easy, I mean, Grok 4.5 is an extremely powerful and fast model. And then I will always, once I've approved the plan and read through the plan and make sure the plan is what I want, then I'm go into build mode in Cursor, hit the build button, spawn up a bunch of cloud agents, and wait for the build to finish. I still test everything before it goes to production personally. Maybe that's a hot take now, but make sure everything looks good. Submit the PR and update linear, and that's really what my workflow is now. And one more recent update to my workflow is that now with the Cursor mobile app, like I'm able to do more of these things on the go because everything is running in the cloud, and I'm able to really manage that from anywhere, which is really exciting.
No, that is really exciting, being able to manage it from your phone, because how many times have I thought in the past also, I wish I could just tell it, keep running this command on my phone and just have it keep working. You don't want to be stuck at your laptop all day.
Yeah. The days of needing to have your laptop be open. I remember, people walking down the street with laptops open, waiting for their agents to finish running. And I think we'll look back on that and find that funny.
And I will say the fun thing is, even if you build this yourself, you can actually throw the phone piece together. If you do a progressive web app and you've got your own little React console, you really can stand up your own ability to do all of this stuff. I think Cursor, by the way, is exceptional as are most of the other tools out there, but it's nice to know that it's actually not that big a lift just to get it working for a single person who needs to have a few hundred agents running.
Yeah, with the Cursor SDK, we actually had a community member create a Cursor app before we even did. So there's a community one that actually works it's a really clean architecture. It just uses the Cursor SDK. With the SDK, you can manage all your agents as well in a very similar manner. And there is a few missing things, like with the Cursor, the official Cursor mobile app, you can actually see the VM if you want. And there's some nice things about seeing the code the agents are producing. But it was really cool to see that someone could just take the Cursor SDK and put a mobile front end on top of it and have actually a really, really strong mobile app.
Okay, so I want to dig into practicalities. I want someone listening to be able to take away an understanding of a real value it's brought to your everyday life. I'll say for me, the first thing I started with, and it's probably what a lot of people start with, is productivity. I created this work log that has now many different workflows in it that do things from generating my pre-podcast research and generating ideas for posts to analyzing all of my meetings and creating a lexicon of all of the work I did that Peter suggested I should do. So what is something that you've done that you use every day that's really changing the way you work or made your life a little bit easier?
So I could jump in with one. For me, I'm still halfway through this. It's early days, but single pane of glass. What I now have is a single database, and sure, it ingests my email, which is great, but I now have a little worker running on my phone. So it allows it to pull from iCloud. It gets my iMessages. It gets my phone calls. I have it running in Slack. I have it ingesting all of the subscriptions that I have for publications so that I can run research. It ingests WhatsApp, Telegram, basically all the things. I'm trying to think about Discord, but it's like kind of they really don't want it to be there. My hope is that by September, I will never use an app or a website again. There is no reason for me to waste time clicking to some random property or to an interface. All of these should come into a single, they're staged in different tables. You have a deterministic classifier. You know what? I name my agent. So I got Nate is my head of partnerships. He does the sales. So if this is an email address from somebody at a company that is an account that might sponsor one of my events, it automatically gets routed to it. No hallucination, no token cost. Then you have a haiku, do a little bit of classifying, and then you have either an opus or a sonnet spin up to go do something smarter. So the only time I want to be interrupted is, you know what? My wife emails me. I should probably be interrupted in the middle of the call. I love you guys, but if you email me, maybe I'll get interrupted after the call, at the end of the day, or when I'm doing a friends catch up twice a week. Attention is all we have as humans. And the more that we can kind of GTD, kind of break that down, like Paul Allen, who's the Getting Things Done guy, and basically say, I want to attend to partnerships. I want to attend to content. I want to attend to programming. I want to attend to things I don't know about. Friday mornings, 2 hours. That way, I get the right messages at the right time, and it is way more efficient from a human context switching perspective than, oh, let's see what's on this Slack. And wow, there's like 7 different things. I think all of those are horrible and should die. No hot takes at all.
Attention is definitely the bottleneck that I feel like I'm facing now, especially with the tools allowing you to learn everything. What are some of the problems along the way, or is there anything that you need to fix and tweak, and how'd you do it? Because I find sometimes it's not always doing the right thing I want, and fixing it once and for all is sometimes difficult.
Real quick, intermediate artifacts, deterministic pipelines, and quality gates. So, for example, I'm writing a book chapter. Turns out you just it doesn't matter how much you few shot train it on your language, it's going to suck, because all it's doing is babbling words that sound like Peter, which isn't terribly useful. So what I now have is, for every book chapter, there is a proposal. The proposal is, why do they care? What's the job to be done of this chapter? Okay, that gets, every step, by the way, gets generated and then adversarially reviewed by one or more agents that have been trained to have the perspective of, in this case, readers of the book. And this generalizes to anything you create it. Once the proposal is ready, I then hand review it, and it captures all the changes I make. It asks me why I made the changes, and those then go back into improving the context for the generator and the adversarial reviewer, so the next proposal will be more me. Then we do an outline. What are the beats? What's the story? What's the flow? And again, adversarial review, and then hand edit, dream or compound based on the hand edit, and improve the context based on that. Then there's this big, deep backing document that's literally like all the research. And for book grade research, one agent goes and gets it, then another agent independently verifies that it didn't hallucinate, the words are indeed in the source, or the summarization is consistent with how it would re-summarize it. Different agent, different model, family, different lab. Then once you've got the backing doc, it generates a draft. Adversarial reviews finally comes to me. I make my changes. Those are captured with the intent so that the generators and adversarial reviewers will be better next time. And then all I have to do is press a button and publish it. So even responding to an email, if you try to go from get an email and respond to it, good luck. If you extract it, map it to a set of strategies for that class, that classifier, sponsors, presenters, participants, your boss. You're going to have different strategies you use for different classes of things. A lot of this can be extracted and inferred from your historic corpus. So give it all mine's been I've got like 60 gig of data between research and like every email I sent since 2010 and all the rest. That's all being classified and used to train in various ways and distilled. And then make sure that you have these intermediate steps. You have ideally deterministic quality gates. You can literally have a script that grep and check for M dashes. If there are any, throw it back. You don't need an agent to check for that. And then you have the adversarial review steps that bring more taste and judgment. And then finally, human in the loop to start, training it until you get so bored hitting approve, because you have nothing to approve, that you then go onto the loop, removing the human step once the trust has been earned.
That sounds a lot, but it makes sense to me given how much, if you think about how much do you ask it, okay, now adversarial view, okay, now, like, if you think about how much you go back and forth, even though that sounds like a lot, you've just set it all up to automatically run. I wonder if, Taylor, do you feel the same? Like, do you have these similar setups as well?
Yeah. To Peter's point, I think when we got dinner, Peter had brought up the point of how are you thinking about crystallizing some of these learnings that you have? So like with Peter's workflow, being able to go back and correct, that's something that I've started to adapt for my own writing processes too, right? Because it's very difficult to look at a blank page or Google Doc and say, go, with any topic, or you choose the topic. You have this analysis paralysis thing happen. At least I do. And so what's the easiest thing to start with? An outline. And to Peter's point, I do something similar where I'm asking what's compelling. Don't list facts. That's helpful if it's a research paper, maybe, but getting people on the hook, people are choosing to spend time reading the thing that you have outputted in the best case scenario. So I would say treat them like they're special. And why did you write this? Was there a purpose behind it, or were you just, tapping keys on your keyboard? Hopefully there was some want to express something in this. And so that's what I've started to do too, is using AI agents for different personalities. Of adversarial review, I'll have this from writing a blog post for my company at Dosu. I'll have it emulate what our head of product might think, or engineers, or some of our ICPs and other people that'll be taking a look at this. That's really helpful because I'm just one person with my lens of how I see the world. So it's helpful for me to see things as I wouldn't see them and get some more ideas on how I can tweak the copy or the idea or the frame, or even just move the outline around as I'm getting started on that front. But I really liked what Peter said as far as crystallizing that knowledge and thinking about these deterministic ways to be able to continue to scale it yourself. Because you could go and have a coding agent run this every single time, but you lose a lot of time when you do that. And if you can, like I could ask my agent right now, is Google up? It's going to take, I don't even know, I'd say 60 seconds, 30 seconds, or I might just be able to have a curl script go, is Google up? 200, okay. Response, okay, we're good. So there are some things that are fun to do on that front too. Like you can even ask your coding agent, look at what I did last week. I use Obsidian for my notes. Go create journal entries for what I worked on this week by day. And I've had it do that, and it's helped me remember things I completely forgot about, rabbit holes I went down that made sense at the time. And then AI is really good at pattern matching and, looking at some emergent properties that come out of all of these sessions too. So really fun to kind of like read the story about yourself and what you worked on for the week. Those are some of the ways that I'll try to get better in an iterative way and fine tune things in my own life, capture data, collect it, classify it. I think that's really helpful. For people that are getting started, I think just think of one problem, or try to identify one thing that's taking you a lot of time within your day, even if it's 20 minutes, and start to think through what are the steps that you're doing there. Because you could take that, you can create skills, you can ask your agent to help dice things up. So it's a little bit more recipe format rather than a big daunting task that you're doing every single time that only you might know how to do.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Does this resonate with you as well?
Yeah, I would definitely using agents that have access to different tools, giving them different instructions, giving them some sort of persona on what their focus is, whether it's a research agent, an agent that's focusing on building or reviewing and testing. But I think just to add to this, personally, the thing that's really shifted in the last couple months is the move from agents running locally to asynchronously in the cloud. And what that unlocks is having agents be spun up based off of events. And I think a lot of these events should be deterministic. It should be based off if a regex expression in Slack is meeting the criteria, and then a certain persona agent is launched. But having agents being launched without me needing to be at my computer and launching them means that I'm less concerned that the agent takes a little bit longer because it's already been running, and when I go to look at it, will have been, running for a little bit. So I personally feel like I might be more on the agent side with a little bit of deterministic, especially around launching the agents and deciding when an agent should be launched or not. But I think that's really been the big change lately for me in my workflows.
I was going to say, Adam, so would it be fair to say that you've got your head in the clouds quite a bit at the time?
Yeah, definitely. All the time.
With some of those agent runs, do you have any advice for people that are trying to think about lifting these things off of their machines so they don't have to walk around with their, like Peter was saying, like this, all the time, like, please don't close my laptop. I had someone do that in an airport recently, and I was very sad because they interrupted my agent, but alas.
Yeah. I mean, for me, the biggest difficulty is, I was doing a lot of systems work, having the agent having access to those systems and making sure all the systems can talk to each other in that virtual machine is typically the biggest issue. Like authentication is a crux of most cloud agents and managing what authentication they have, and that the agent can fully test from system to system. But I think the great workaround is being able to, I think 3 months ago now, Cursor launched local cloud agents, which is a agent that is managed in the cloud, but it is using a local machine and has all the authentication, just like how you would if you're using, like, there's plenty of other harnesses that do something similar, but allows you to, when having a fully fresh VM every time won't cut it, which can happen. There's ways to get around that, and whether it's like having saved VM images that your agents run in, or even having like local machines that they're running on, seems to be the best workaround. But to finish the point, just making sure that if you're running a cloud agent in a fresh VM, that they are able to access all the systems that they need to pull context.
And just something I thought, I mean, I think it's a great idea to move your agents to the cloud, but I think it's not just the benefits of being able to close your laptop and access it from your phone. It's also that you can put governance, auditability, you can basically have sandboxes, because I see so many companies like, sure, start off with Claude Code, Cursor, whatever you're using locally, that's great. At some point, you're going to go very quickly, you go to YOLO, if anyone can still remember saying, approve, approve, approve for about 30 seconds without reading any of it before you're like, wait, how do I dangerously skip permissions? Once you dangerously skip permissions, your hard drive is now at risk. And most of the time you'll be fine, except when you're not.
Yeah.
Really good time to start using sandboxes. Cloud sandboxes make the most sense, but even if you're just going to run them like local, lightweight sandboxes, try to get some governance and wrapping around the tools the agents can do and constrain their blast radius, especially as you start telling them to do big things like re-envision how we're going to store all these files and move them all, because it might just get a little carried away with your hard drive.
Great. I think great point on that front. It's especially the hard drive at risk front. I'd rather just borrow a friend's hard drive and fill that up instead. I think that's one of the things that I'm curious about hearing from all of you, is that I'm biased because I work at Dosu, and we really focus on context and storing that so that it can be reused across agents and people, or agents and teams of people, teams of agents, and just scale up as you will. But I think that that's something that could be helpful as you go to the cloud, right? When you're trying to pull this context, you want to start from scratch, or you want to start from whatever your team has collectively figured out already, and not have to go burn tokens and all these things. So to me, the most important things that we'll figure out in the next, I don't know, we could ask Claude, but next couple of months is what's important as it pertains to orchestrators and just context distribution and just how that's sourced, specifically as we go to the cloud. I think it'll be a fun thing to see how this evolves.
Yeah, I totally agree. And maybe one thing we can talk about kind of on that note is skills. What are some skills that you have been implementing that are extremely useful, and how are you creating them? For example, speaking of just like, in my mind, context, even locally, is a lot of mine is stored in the skill about how to, react to a prompt that I'm giving it based on whatever that skill's context has as well. And for example, I like what you mentioned, Peter, about making it learn from the session. So I created a skill, learn from session, so that every time that I've iteratively gone through a process that I think the skill should have done, it can make sure to take that in. So how are you creating these skills and saving these different types of patterns that you're implementing over and over again?
For us, we actually have systems that will recommend a skill based off of what you're working on. Also, it does that with an automation as well. So if it thinks that you might want to create this more than once, it'll be like, do you want to create an automation for this? Which is a skill-esque. I mean, it's like a repository with agent instructions with tools that are spun up based off an event. But I think skills are really helpful for having your agents know, manual, repetitive things that you constantly want to do. I love the idea of having a skill to create other skills. I think that's a really good one.
Yeah, I think my first level up personally was skills, right? From just doing the prompt is that repeating of, I want you to do it like this, like go in my emails, use Google Workspace and find the ones I've been missing. Rather than that, just do a slash miss emails or something, you know? And so that's like very basic first few that I've done. For me, I have a voice coach. So I just became a forward deployed engineer. I have a forward deployed engineer coach, which kind of has like the perspective, and I also have my own voice. So not only a voice coach, but also Alexa's voice, which is my style. So I'm like, use Alexa's voice to create this writing. So those are just like some that have been good for me. And I keep creating more if I have to type it more than a couple times. Like even I have one, I've been using Claude Design recently, which is amazing for animations and creating design tokens for designing a website. I've had a lot of fun with that. But I find myself even as little as this saying, give me a prompt to make an animation for Claude Design from this blog I've written. So even that is a good skill to have. I'm curious, like what other you have as well.
So I don't use skills directly that much anymore because it's something that gets generated by Sloan, who's my head of engineering, my agentic head of engineering, who does like, oh, we're seeing this problem, and they're all self-improving now. So we capture every transcript, anything I run on the laptop, all the stuff on the minis, it all goes to Cloudflare R2. It also gets dreamed, captures facts in the database, and then they are used to regenerate the context files. But like going back to like when I was doing the skills directly, there were a few that I thought were the most high impact and that you could build everything else on. Firstly, a research skill. Because, for example, if you want a skill on something, how about you go research and find all the other skills that already exist on that something and identify if there are good patterns or elements that might accelerate you getting there. Secondly, an interview skill. Most of us do a bad job, like any business stakeholder, of actually specifying our requirements. We usually just give a poorly specified solution rather than identifying the problem. So if you have an interview skill that kind of goes through 5 whys and thinks about all of the dimensions, but based on the kind of thing you want, you are much more likely to have that with a fairly dumb model like that. It's a kind of Sonnet kind of thing, to then generate a well-structured prompt. You don't want to just throw your first ideas into Fable, otherwise you're going to burn tokens for no good reason. Next thing, Alex, for example, what you said, skill builder skill. You must have a skill that is good at building skills, but you also need a skill reviewer skill that will review for exfil, for security implications, for token efficiency, lots of things you can do to have a skill that tunes your skills. And then the final level up for me, before you go out and decide you want to go build an orchestrator, which would just be crazy, is a supervisor pattern style set of skills. So it's basically a skill that says, hey, you're some real smart agent. Go tell other agents, balancing your wisdom with their token efficiency to blah, 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 blah. And then you give it the end stage process with the, and like I find, for example, when I'm running stuff, even on my laptop, I'll run something in Claude, but I can get it to, it knows where codex is on my hard drive. And I've let it, I'm not following my own rule there in terms of sandboxes for some of the stuff I run, sharp edges. But then what it'll do is it'll actually go over to Codex, get a 5.5 to do an adversarial review on something that was generated by an opus, and it will just babysit that all the way through, sipping tokens, and give me an outcome. It is not the destination. The destination, if you do that multiple times, should be a deterministic pipeline. You shouldn't be using tokens to basically keep track of a checklist. Like, that's a waste of tokens and intelligence. But there's a lot of infrastructure required to have an orchestrator, and a skill that uses a supervisor pattern. You can just give the MD file to your friend. So those are some of the classes of, like, those are the high leverage skills that actually allow you to build all the other skills you're talking about and to make them more robust.
I like those classes that you've talked about, Peter. And I found myself in a similar situation with skills, is that I remember hearing when they first came out, I got really excited. I was like, but also worried, because this is another thing I have to learn, right? In this age of AI that's racing past us at, I don't even know how many miles or kilometers per hour. And now I'd say I fall in the same camp as far as not managing these skills so much. I have created some in the past to like Alexa, to create like, what's my tone of voice? What are the things I typically like to focus on? I was not surprised to find out that puns were one of those things. And so you get those high level kinds of things that are captured as part of this. But I think when I've used different skills creator and some other tools to try to take a look at this, I think the maintenance has been the thing that's like really slogged me down without getting agentic help to keep all these things up to date. But the things that have crystallized for me there are processes. Just again, if I have my list of steps or things, I'll typically find myself peeling those off and putting them into skills or an agent's MD. And then my favorite skills are the ones that can utilize APIs. And so, or CLI tools, because when you're using something like MCP, you get a lot of bloat there. It just can be slow. And so I've been to a couple of meetups where people are starting to talk more about that pattern is like, hey, my MCP is it's incredibly bloated, or some people that brag about not using MCP at all.
Yeah, dude, use the API.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't watch TE either. Cool.
Yeah, and then that has amassed to like workflows to automate, then that grows to automate jobs, which call the skills underneath as well.
I realized I forgot which, because again, it's kind of built into a bigger system for me, a skill librarian and resolver. Because here's the big problem. Your agents are going to be, once you give them the autonomy to generate the skills required to unblock the work, and you end up with 7,300 skills, which are very similar, and then it becomes hard for the agent. And wait, why are you using that skill? Because we don't use that API anymore. We use the new, oh wait, we didn't update the API in that skill, but we didn't. It's a nightmare. So what you actually need to be doing is curating and culling these. There's two elements. You need the skill librarian, which is responsible for identifying clusters of these, seeing if they can be grouped, prioritized, are they really different use cases? And then a resolver, which you run at runtime, and its job is to actually help the agent to pull the right skill for the job consistently. And then ideally you should be running evals against this, and you should be running training data against your transcripts to make sure that when you get failed tool calls or misses in terms of calling a skill that shouldn't be that skill, that should be used as like P2 bugs that are automatically used to fix the skills of the resolver.
So I actually kind of came on this path naturally, as you probably did, but you're way more advanced than I am. And that I also have a system review, because you just start to notice that there's files everywhere and things are just going crazy. And you ask like, okay, what's the best way to set this up, right? So it seems like there's a shift, even when it comes to us talking about skills, from, like I said, that just prompting, oh, I have a good result. And when you try to do more systematic, large context things, to setting up that rubric and those definitions and those rules and those processes to keep everything in check. And it can be a bit overwhelming, right? How are you approaching this rubric in order to make all of your tools successful and simple systems?
The agents manage the agents, manage the agents with another set of agents to review to make sure that the agents managing the agents managing the agents did the thing that they said that the agents did. Yeah. It's agents all the way up. You just put more levels. Just assume you've got crazy interns who are insanely smart, but occasionally pull an all-nighter with Ritalin and just start forgetting random stuff and put the guard. It's like when Etsy said, like, deploy on day one. And like companies were like, you can't let a new employee deploy on day one. They're going to break the system. And they were like, if our system is so brittle that an engineer can accidentally break it on their first day at work, we should probably fix our system, not train the developer. And it's the same with agents. Make it less brittle, better observability, feature flagging, canary rollouts, systems that watch systems that make sure the systems that watch the systems are actually there. You've got to balance the complexity, and there's a balance. You build a rubric for a complexity budget, and you balance the cost, complexity, and uptime, right? Nobody can afford all the nines, but you get the agents to solve the problems that the agents create whilst managing the agents who are trying to do the work for the agents.
This is a lot of compute, no?
But it gets real cheap. Like I was speaking with Farhan, head of engineering at Shopify, and they're like running distillers now. You have teacher student models. I'm a single person. Like it's just me. Like I have, my inference budget's $2-3 grand a month, but I'm looking at the cost of fine tuning. Like, is it worth me running fine tuning, or do I just do context distillation? Because some point, Daddy OpenAI and Daddy Anthropic are going to stop giving away the free candy, and I'm going to have to afford to run this stuff on open weights. And so I'm really trying to tune the evals and make the steps as small as possible so that I can dumb them down to some of it you can replace with literally like conditional, like logic, like, a Python code, and certainly get it down to the dumbest, cheapest, smallest, most token efficient model possible. So that's going to be a thing.
Yeah.
You too can have your own distributed system at home. I love it. Adam, are you seeing it like developers at Cursor? Because I know Cursor developers are super users from talking to you and the rest of the Cursor people. Are you seeing them run a large amount of workloads every day to do everything as well? Is it pretty much just like pre-roll, run as much as you want?
Yeah, I would say one thing that kind of like guiding principles for me, like I want my agents to be developing in a box. Like if you think of what LLMs are, they're non-deterministic, and if you just let it kind of go for it, it could go in a million different ways. And I think like defining a box and how do you define that box? I think that starts with a really great plan. But then also, once it's built something, like what are all the feedback loops that you can give it? And that's where I think things like unit tests, test classes are extremely helpful so that in evals as well, so that it knows like, am I doing this right or not? Am I on the right path? And then another thing that I found really helpful is one thing that cloud agents do is once it build something, it will create a video recording, almost a demo video of what it built, and will give it to you as a proof almost that it built what was within the design and the spec. And I think that's been really helpful. You guys have probably all had the experience of an LM saying something that was not the case. And defining a box, having the agent build within the box, and then having feedback loops so that it knows it's on the right path and can validate that it did what you intended it to do.
I like that. It's never been truer. I used to get upset with my teacher back when I was a young kid because I would do math and I would print the answer, right? And I kept getting told to show my work. They didn't say it was to train the model at the time, but that really helps, right? Is being able for us to be able to trace back these things and kind of how we arrive at these answers is what I'm hearing from everybody here. I think that that's helpful and fun and helps you scale as we switch out models and jump to the cloud or back or all of these other contexts.
One distinction here is there are different types of workflows. They're all talking like Peter is building a large workload that's like running his business, which that investment is definitely worth it. So I want to walk through a scenario that I had recently that I think many other might have the question of. And let's say you're developing something on your laptop and you're developing it with Claude Code. And for example, I had this project, right? And I wanted to create a tool that our sales associates and customers could use. It's like an interactive demo or an interactive UI. I deployed on Versal. So I first, just with the context it knew and about me generally, was like, spin up a demo. I just want to see it first. Great. It was better than I expected, honestly. I was surprised. Okay, cool. Now go do all this research. Make yourself like an expert, make a few different experts, get all this data, get all this repo data, everything, download it, make a map of the facts with links, everything. Now create me a new demo. And to be honest with you, after I did all that, so a lot of context, I found that actually maybe it wasn't as good as I expected. And then I started to realize that I need these like rules and guardrails, right? I need a Claude MD file. I need all of these things. I need to start setting up rules about every time you make a change, you need to test it like this. Never change the UI in this way and all this. But still, I feel that at times I'm kind of struggling to make it do the right thing. It's a lot of me prompting even after I've given it the rules. And my question to you is like, how do you go creating a project like this, going from demo to something that you can give to customers to use? And what is the process that you've learned along the way about these types of steps?
I'd say when it comes down to that first demo and the MVP, going back to just having some kind of goal in mind, or like, what's the thing that I want to show? I agree with you completely, Alexa, that being able to showcase an idea or share that with the team, a demo is the best way, right? And awesome to hear that that's been my experience too, is it comes out the door, I'm like, wow, this is way better than I thought. Maybe it's because I came up with the idea, I'm not sure if that factors into it, but being able to see something,
Right.
it's like, wow, my idea is great. It's real. It's in the world. I think usually I'll go through a very long process of just going and doing a lot of manual checking, looking at the ordering of tabs or the ways in which things are conveyed. I'll go check the math for things where I'm like looking through logs and other tasks like that. For me, I haven't been able to distill it into a skill just yet, but being able to figure out, like, how do you involve empathy as it pertains to this? Is there any research that you can get, plugging into something like Exa or web search or whatever it is, to get a sense of, like, what are the best dev tool trends right now that would make this a compelling product or MVP or whatever it is there too. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, the usability of it and that developer experience, that's typically what'll come next for me, is one, validate the idea, see if it works somewhat, or I can confirm, very rudimentarily that it's okay. And then I'll go to polish and sharpen a lot of what I'm working on. And then the last part is, are there any calls to action? I can make something that's really cool, polish it up really nice, share it out, and it could be not helpful at all to the team. And, 100% that's happened several times, but it's always a good conversation afterwards. So also thinking that last bit, is there a call to action? Can we level this up? Does this scale, or is this done? Software is never done, but like for the intent of the project or demo you're working on, is this as far as it goes? It is another part of what I try to evaluate there.
Yeah, I think personally what I've learned along the way is like more iterative steps. Like, it does so well sometimes when you say so little, but if you're making a project from demo to something productionized, you need to really be a little bit more iterative. It's not just like go spawn all these agents and do everything all at once. It gets a little bit sick sometimes with that, unless you put really strict guardrails like Peter, what you've talked about, which, to your point, it takes a lot of time still. If you need to put a lot of time into making sure this is right, like, it doesn't just go off and work like it does for some simple prompt things where you're like, wow, this is great, better than I expected. But when you're creating a project, that's not always the case. I would say more often than not, it's not the case.
No, it's the 20%, the 80% rule, right? It looks great. And honestly, I've got a bunch of crappy things. I got something that takes my Aura ring and it takes stuff from my Apple iWatch, and it's like, and all that health data. I don't even want to look at that code. It's junk. But worst case, I don't get my health data for a day. Like, it's fine. It's not exposed anywhere where it's going to be accessed insecurely. I can live with a risk profile. The blast radius is small. If I'm building a project for customers, firstly, you've got to say, how big a deal is it? Again, they're going to show it on their kid's laptop once, or are they deploying it to 10,000 users, or, like as part of like a conference that nation state actors are going to try to take down? I mean, there's very different threat profiles, blast radiuses, and budgets just for the tokens. You then you have a project process that goes through everything from the specification, the interview, the rubric as to whether it's worth doing, and all of the dimensions and the stakeholders and the communications plan if you have other humans that need to engage with it. You're hiring a program manager, so go get a program manager agent to figure out all the good practices scaled to the size of the team and the project, and get the project and the governance and the communications in place. Then you have the kickoff. You need design systems. You need architectural reviews. I was speaking with this guy, John Kennedy, at Actual.ai. It's fascinating. They will basically ingest your brownfield code base and generate the ADRs that describe how code should be written in a given repo within your environment. So you can infer them rather than having to write them from scratch. Then you generate code, you review it. Tests runs, by the way, never let an agent check its own work, and never have an agent run tests. Like, it's very easy. It's a bash script. Like, that's why they exist. Have a deterministic step to go do that. Performance tests, security tests, maintainability tests. Make sure it documents. What's your definition of done for a good senior engineer for writing this? You want good documentation for agents and humans. And then you want to deploy, and you want to think about maintainability and FinOps and all the rest. And then you want to, if you're not continuing to run it, if I'm writing software for a friend, I'm also going to give that friend a subdirectory with just enough agent competence to engage with the documents there to debug and fix stuff to basically keep it running in production and add new features. That would be the life cycle of if somebody was paying me, 50 grand to go write a piece of software.
So I use a model that, like Fable 5 for planning, like you mentioned, Adam. It's also what I've been using. And I tell it, I'm going to have agents go off and Opus or whatever and do the actual work, right? Write this so good that it cannot go wrong. But sometimes it still goes wrong. So what do you do to keep it from doing that? Just make sure your Claude MD is good, or like you said, to have that sub-agent file. Is that
you need so much? Again, how long did it take me to get to the point where an agent could write a chapter of my book? About 5 minutes. Go write a chapter of my book. Make it sound like me. Here's 3 other chapters. How long did it take it until I was getting to the point where I didn't need to make many changes? I'd say about 2.5 weeks of effort. But now it can write as many books as I want really quickly because it writes better than I do with more research, and it has almost all of my taste encoded.
Yeah. So you got to put in the time to make it worth it. Do you have this experience, Adam, with managing them?
I think always reviewing the plan is making sure that the plan is on track is kind of my go-to. I heard you guys all mention kind of about costs. And I think the interesting thing, we've kind of gone from companies focusing on leaderboard, burn as many tokens, whoever's burning the most tokens is doing, what's best, to going from token maxing to kind of like a token value kind of framework. I'm curious what you guys are doing to make the most of your tokens and how you guys value tokens and prove that it's having an ROI.
I'm happy to screen share. And I've actually got an answer to this. I've been thinking about this. Let me see here. So
Yeah, feel free.
this is one of the things that we'll be releasing soon as an open source project. And let me know if that doesn't pop up. It should pop up here soon. So these are what you see in terms of the estimated cost. That's because I'm evaluating everything via API calls effectively. Though I'm using my subscriptions, right? So am I getting my 200 Pro and 200 Max subscriptions tokens worth? Yes, but I can pare this down to take a look at the past 7 days. And then one of the things that we're starting to do is take a look at, again, is this context? Is this planning? Is this generating code? And so when thinking about tokens and cost, I can actually drill down into sessions as well. This all based off of the log data. And no worries, Adam. I had a colleague ask for cursor support, so we'll be working on adding that as well. But yeah, cloud runs are hard to measure, but we'll figure it out. You can kind of drill into these things and take a look at what's going on with Soul or with Opus or Fable. It gets really interesting because you could take a look at the different calls and then further introspect and see what makes the most sense to optimize as far as each agent run or how many messages gets created. So I'm very excited to release this once it's all ready, and I've got some of these bugs tuned out as it loads up a little bit faster. But this is one of the ways that we're starting to measure things at Dosu and with a couple friends and colleagues on that front.
Awesome. Yeah, I think observability is really important. First, understand where tokens are going. I'll say right now for most engineers, though, I think from a daily engineering perspective, I actually don't know my daily token use.
It's this. I don't think
a lot though.
Yeah, I know it's not the job of the engineers, though. It's the job of the platform team, right? And so the goal, one of the things you do as a DevX or platform team is firstly, you allow the people who are excited to just go do their thing, and please just don't leak PII data and put it on servers in China. Great. Okay, so we've got a few big guardrails. Once you start to get that in, you're like, great, now we need a model router. Let's start routing all of your model calls through the shared model router, which can then have the back end so we can have failover, we get observability, we can capture the transcripts, we can see all the things, we can start to put governance and rules around it. And then you start to look for clusters of data. And the important thing is that You can't use this. You don't want to promote somebody if they use too many tokens. You don't want to fire somebody if they use too many tokens. What you want to do is look for clusters as a diagnostic. I was doing like a Riley CTO hour, and there's like some great input on this, which is the diagnostic is, if we see these deltas in token usage, like this kind of thing, that means somebody tried a single agent and failed. So we're going to generate this training plan for succeed with your single agent in the Cursor IDE or whatever it is. And we're going to send that out to those people, track it, and then look at their transcripts over the next few days and see if it's working. And if not, we can always send a note to the manager like, hey, help them to succeed. And then you're going to have other super users who are burning tokens and should be. Sometimes I'm going to be using a huge number of tokens and I go down by 60%. Why? Because I ran a set of evals and managed to figure out how to use cheaper models to do the same or more. So you really have to look. I think that this is the job of any company that has more than like 10 employees, certainly more than 5 or 10 developers, should have a person or a team in platform or DevX doing this work. Because it's just inefficient for every single developer to try to figure out, am I running the right evals against the right models in the right way? It's just, you've got customers and you should be developing specifications and verifications for features that are going to deliver value.
Yeah. And like on a higher level, so I'm an inference FP, right? So I'm talking to a lot of people in enterprise that are asking the question of either like, here's my hardware, how can I utilize it? Or here's my use case, what do I need to run this? And I find that a lot of people are asking these tokenomic questions, which is all about like, not just what's the best model. And I know this is kind of getting a bit larger than like running it on your computer and stuff, but it's also about what is all the routing, the setup, and the optimizations around the model that will make this the most efficient product it can be? And answering that question is not always simple, along with, should I move to on-prem? What does that mean to use an open source model on-prem? What are the token economics there? So I think we're just getting to this stage now where people are starting to say, oh, my file bill is quite large. Maybe I should bring this in-house or find some other way to do it for those who have the ability and the funds and the resources to.
I'm even looking, but it's an incremental process. I mean, again, I'm one person, but I've got a run pod for running open weight models, and I'm eyeing a couple of DGX Sparks just in case I go crazy one day. But what you do is you spin up the run pod, and you get to the point where, I'm going to be spending $800 a month, so 10 grand on the DGXs. This is the ROI. Suddenly, I'm like, okay, somewhere between 800 and 1,400 bucks a month is when you buy the Sparks, and then you switch over, and then you get that working, then you decommission the run pod, or keep it for bursty work. So we've done this before. Like we did this when we moved like other CPU workflows to the cloud. And I think we'll manage it for GPUs as well. But you have to have the evals, otherwise you can't reduce the cost.
Yeah, definitely. It's a distributed system. And when you want to be multi-cluster or multi-node inference, ring me up and let me know. I have some recommendations for you.
I don't know if I could afford them, but I'll call you anyway.
I'm sure this business will grow so big that you'll need it. I believe in you. But yeah, so there are some other things that we haven't talked about, and let's just do one now very quickly, and that's adversarial review. And we've mentioned it quite a bit, but I really think now adversarial review is such a good tool to use when you're creating a project or a spec. And I've heard all the super users, and you guys are included, that this is something that they're doing in every workflow. So talk to me a little bit about the importance of adversarial review.
When it comes to adversarial review, my quick takeaway there is if you have the tokens to be able to spend on those, as many as possible, right? Because each of those is going to come away with some kind of finding. And you don't always need Opus or Fable for those either. You might be able to get away with like a good enough amount of like, what's the role you want this evaluator to have in Sonnet, or kind of play around with the level of effort as well. Yeah, I think as many as you can muster on that front. I think the most interesting adversarial review person that I had was for a blog post, and it came up with Reddit shitposter as the person to audit against. And I was like, wow, it really knows the culture very well. But
I'm scared. I post things on Reddit sometimes. I'm always scared because I know they're going to roast me. I'm ready for it.
This has been so much fun. Thank you so much for letting me hang out.
Thank you so much, guys. This was awesome. Thank you.
Go, guys.
Bye. Bye, guys.
Thank you so much for listening to Alexa's Input AI. And if you want to follow along with my new episodes, writing, content, everything I'm building, You can find me at alexagriffith.com, on Substack, on YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you enjoyed this conversation, it would mean a lot if you subscribe, share this episode with a friend, left a quick rating or a comment to help more people to discover the show and keep these conversations going. Again, I'm really grateful you're here. This podcast started as a side project for me a few years ago, and every listener who reaches out or keeps coming back reminds me exactly why I love doing this and I love putting so much time into it. I hope this episode gave you something to think about, something to talk about. So always stay curious, stay grounded, and I hope to see you next time. Thank you for your support.